I awoke abruptly out of a dream of strange beasts and find myself lying on my back. Probably everyone knows that dismal, emotional dream from which one escapes. Awake indeed, but strangely cowed. There was a curious taste in my mouth, a tired feeling in my limbs, a sense of cutaneous discomfort. I lay with my head motionless on my pillow, expecting that my feeling of strangeness and terror would probably pass away, and that I should then doze off again to sleep. But instead of that, my uncanny sensations increased. At first, I could perceive nothing wrong about me. There was a faint light in the room, so faint that it was the very next thing to darkness, and the furniture stood out in it as vague blots of absolute darkness. I stared with my eyes just over the bedclothes. It came into my mind that someone had entered the room to rob me of my roll of money. But after lying for some moments, breathing regularly to simulate sleep, I realized this was mere fancy. Nevertheless, the uneasy assurance of something wrong kept fast hold of me. With an effort, I raised my head from the pillow and peered about me at the dark. What it was I could not conceive. I looked at the dim shapes around me, the greater and lesser darknesses that indicated curtains, table, fireplace, bookshelves, and so forth. Then I began to perceive something unfamiliar in the forms of the darkness. Had the bed turned round? There should be bookshelves, and something shrouded and pallid rose there. Something that would not answer to the bookshelves. However, I looked at it. It was far too big to be my shirt thrown on a chair. Overcoming a childish terror, I threw back the bedclothes and thrust my leg out of bed. Instead of coming out of my truckle bed upon the floor, I found my foot scarcely reached the head of the mattress. I made another step, as it were, and sat up on the edge of the bed. By the side of my bed should be the candle, and the matches upon the broken chair. I put my hand out and touched nothing. I waved my hand in the darkness, and it came against something heavy hanging, soft and thick in texture, which gave a rustling noise at my touch. I grasped this and pulled it. It appeared to be a curtain suspended over the head of my bed. I was now thoroughly awake and beginning to realize that I was in a strange room. I was puzzled. I tried to recall the overnight circumstances, and I found them now, curiously enough, vivid in my memory. The supper, my reception of the little packages, my wonder whether I was intoxicated, my slow undressing, the coolness to my flushed face of my pillow. I felt a sudden distrust. Was that last night or the night before? At any rate, this room was strange to me, and I could not imagine how I had got into it. The dim, pallid outline was growing paler, and I perceived it was a window with the dark shape of an oval toilet glass against the weak intimation of the dawn. that filtered through the blind. I stood up and was surprised by a curious feeling of weakness and unsteadiness. With trembling hands outstretched, I walked slowly towards the window, getting, nevertheless, a bruise on the knee from a chair by the way. I fumbled round the glass, which was large, to find the blind cord. I could not find any. By chance, I took hold of the tassel, and with the click of a spring, the blind ran up. I found myself looking out upon a scene that was altogether strange to me. The night was overcast, and through the flackling gray of the heaped clouds, there filtered a faint half-light of dawn. Just at the edge of the sky, the cloud canopy had a blood-red rim. Below, everything was dark and indistinct. Deep hills in the distance, a vague mass of buildings running up into pinnacles, and below the window a tracery of black bushes and pale gray paths. It was so unfamiliar that for the moment I thought myself still dreaming. I felt the toilet table. It appeared to be made of some polished wood and was rather elaborately furnished. There were little cut glass bottles and a brush upon it. There was also a strange little object, horseshoe-shaped it felt, with smooth, hard projections, lying in a saucer. I could find no matches, nor a candlestick. I turned my eyes to the room again. Now the blind was up. Faint specters of it furnishing came out of the darkness. There was a huge curtained bed, and the fireplace at its foot had a large white mantle with something of a shimmer of marble. I leaned against the toilet table, shut my eyes, and opened them again, and tried to think. The whole thing was far too real for dreaming. I was inclined to imagine that there was still some hiatus in my memory as a consequence of that strange liquor, that I had come into my inheritance perhaps, and suddenly lost my recollection of everything since my good fortune had been announced. Perhaps if I waited a little, things would be clearer to me again. Yet, my dinner with old Elvesham was now singularly vivid and recent. The champagne, the observant waiters, the powder, and the liquors. I could have bet my life it all happened just a few hours ago. And then, a thing so trivial and yet so terrible occurred to me that I now shiver to think of that moment. I spoke aloud. I said, "How the devil did I get here?" And the voice was not my own. It was not my own. It was thin. The articulation was slurred. The resonance of my facial bones was different. Then, to reassure myself, I ran one hand over the other and felt loose folds of skin, the bony laxity of age. "Surely," I said, in that horrible voice that had somehow established itself in my throat. "Surely, this thing is a dream." Almost as quickly as if I did it involuntarily, I thrust my fingers into my mouth. My teeth had gone. My fingertips ran on the flaccid surface of an even row of shriveled gums. I was sick with dismay and disgust. I felt then a passionate desire to see myself, to realize at once, in its full horror, the ghastly change that had come upon me. I staggered to the mantel, and along it, I felt for matches. As I did so, a barking cough sprang up into my throat, and I clutched the thick flannel nightdress I found about me. There were no matches there, and I suddenly realized that my extremities were cold. Sniffing and coughing, whimpering a little, perhaps I fumbled back to bed. It is surely a dream, I whimpered to myself as I clambered back. Surely a dream. It was a senile repetition. I pulled the bedclothes over my shoulders, over my ears. I thrust my withered hand under the pillow and determined to compose myself to sleep. Of course, it was a dream. In the morning, the dream would be over, and I should wake up strong and vigorous again to my youth and studies. I shut my eyes, breathed regularly, and finding myself wakeful, began to count slowly through the powers of 3. But the thing I desired would not come. I could not get to sleep, and the persuasion of the inexorable reality of the change that had happened to me grew steadily. Presently, I found myself with my eyes wide open, the powers of 3 forgotten, and my skinny fingers upon my shriveled gums. I was, indeed, suddenly and abruptly, an old man. I had in some unaccountable manner fallen through my life and come to old age. In some way, I had been cheated out of all of the best of my life, of love, of struggle, of strength, and hope. I groveled into the pillow and tried to persuade myself that such hallucination was possible. Imperceptibly, steadily, the dawn grew clearer. At last, despairing of further sleep, I sat up in bed and looked about me. A chill twilight rendered the whole chamber visible. It was spacious and well furnished, better furnished than any room I had ever slept in before. A candle and matches became dimly visible upon a little pedestal in a corner. I threw back the bedclothes, and shivering with the rawness of the early morning, I got out and lit the candle. Then, trembling horribly, I staggered to the mirror and saw Elvesham's face.